A Dragonlance media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Dragonlance Media bringing you another book review today. So cheers. I know I shouldn't be drinking a brewski, but Cass is just so fucking good. Man, South Koreans know how to brew their fucking beers. I'm telling you. This one is kind of an older book, but still fantastic. I'm going to be talking about Theros Ironfeld today. This is book 4 in a 7-book series called The Warriors. This is an old Dragonlance series that kind of dealt with both heroes and villains. I've already reviewed book 6 of this series, Lord Soth. You can find it on the Dragonlance Media channel. But yeah, I was really interested to read this one and kind of find out more about this character, because Theros Ironfeld is actually a really important character in the Dragonlance mythos, especially in the Dragonlance Chronicles series, where he becomes the smith that starts to forge the Dragonlances again. And of course, Dragonlance namesake, they can take out the chromatic dragons and all of that kind of fucking cool shit that I'm not going to get into right now. But yeah, this was written by Don Perrin. I recently reviewed a book that he and Margaret Weiss wrote called The Doom Brigade. Very talented writer. Absolutely loved everything about this book. But let's start just with the cover. Look at that. That Jeff Easley artwork. So fucking evocative. You have Theros Ironfeld and you have a Minotaur behind him, which I assume is Thrun. And they're kind of forging weapons there. It's a beautiful piece of art for a book that really kind of captures the backstory of a character that, while important in the Chronicles series, really we don't hear enough about. So that's why I was kind of excited to read this book, because I've always loved Dragonlance Chronicles. As you can see here, I have the Omnibus edition, the collector's edition, with the Larry Elmore art on the cover there. Always love this series. This is a series that is so near and dear to my heart that I cannot stop recommending it to fucking people. I really can't. It's just brilliant. So, about a year ago, give or take, I purchased a bunch of novels from a friend over here that was kind of getting rid of them. And this was one of the books that came with it. I always wanted to read this back in the day. Never had the opportunity. Finally got the chance to. I was not fucking disappointed. So this is going to be a spoiler-filled review of the Dragonlance Warriors book 4 in the series. I might add that you don't need to kind of read the series in chronological order. They are standalone novels. But this deals with the character of Theros Ironfeld. I always called him Ironfield back in the day because I'm a fucking idiot, but whatever. And yeah, we're just going to get straight into the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. People.
Okay, so... those of you that know Dragonlance will know that Theros Ironfeld is a blacksmith who ultimately comes into possession of some rare artifacts that allow him to forge the Dragonlances that turn the War of the Lance around. That is kind of in the Chronicles novel series. But where the fuck did this dude come from? This book answers that, and it is so fucking awesome that I don't even know where to begin. So I've got some maps to show you here, which may or may not help. But the whole thing kind of starts with minotaurs. Now, minotaurs come from the islands of Mythas and Kothas, and they raid his kind of village, which is up here in Nordmar. So you kind of get a bit of an understanding there. The Minotaurs are trying to set up an encampment on Ansalon, the continent, but they're being pushed back by the Sylvanesti elves. Now, I'm going to be throwing a lot of terms at you that you're maybe not going to know. Just fucking go with it. It's fine. So they raid this village and they spare the women and they spare the children, but they take the men as slaves. A young Theros basically says to the Minotaurs, because they're going to leave him behind because he's a child, he's like, hey, my dad fucking hates me because my mum died in childbirth. I'm going with you guys. And they're like, what the fuck? But they take him. So he works on a ship. He's only about 10 years old at this point, and he learns this idea of the Minotaur Code of Honor. He starts to believe in the Minotaur god Sargas, who is one of the gods of Kryn that presumably left after the cataclysm. Now, I know I have to explain this, so basically Kryn had these gods, and there was a king priest in this city called Ishtar, and the king priest was like, hey, we don't work for you, you work for us. And the gods went, oh, fuck that shit. And they fucking threw a mountain down and decimated Ishtar. And then the gods left Kryn, and there are no more gods on Kryn, so to speak. But, yeah, it kind of went down that way, and now everyone's kind of fucking, what the fuck is going on? So Sargas is there. He's the Minotaur god. The Minotaurs are an honorable race at this point. In a lot of D&D, Minotaurs are just fucking bullheaded psychos. But no, in Dragonlance, they are actually quite honorable, and they like battle, and they kind of do things a certain way. And Theros is raised by Minotaurs, so to speak. He learns the ways of the smith. He is, while he is raised on a ship, he gets kind of traded to this colony on Ansalon, where he learns from the Minotaur Thrun how to be a blacksmith, so to speak. The Sylvanesti elves attack, and in the ensuing battle, Thrun basically protects Theros and dies in battle. Theros makes his way back to the Minotaur island of Mythos, where he meets Thrun's brother, who kind of continues to train him in the ways of being a smith. In the interim, there is a Minotaur called Hulak who hates humans, but realizes that there is something special about Theros, that Theros is honorable and that he follows the ways of the Minotaur. So he actually frees him from being a slave, and he becomes part of Thrun's clan. So he is, in effect, or in the eyes of the Minotaurs, he is one of them. He manages to get enough steel, which is the coin, I guess. You know, we use gold and money and whatnot. Money, there we go. He gets enough steel to head to the mainland and start his own smithy in a town called Sanction. Now, those of you that know Dragonlance know that Sanction is a fucking bad place. And I'm talking like fucking Western Sydney bad. Yeah, I went there, bitches. Whatever. So he starts his smithy. In the before he left, Hrun's brother gave him a name that he could kind of a contact he could make in Sanction. This guy called Morgoth. He finds out when he gets there that Morgoth is the Baron of this town of evil, so to speak. He doesn't approach him initially, but he builds up his smithy and basically makes a name for himself as a weaponsmith and an armorsmith. And then Morgoth comes to him and says, I want you to join my army. We are going off raiding. And Theros is like, you know what? I've got a good here, so fuck off. What happens is a soldier from Morgoth's army comes to him with a blade and says, can you sharpen this? And the minute that Theros puts it in the fire, all these like miniature red dragons come out and just burn the smithy down to the ground. It is a fucking amazing scene, and one that I will probably use if I run a D&D game in the future. So Ian, Luke, ignore that part because I'm not going to use it, but I'm not going to use it. I'm fucking going to use it. So with no smithy left, Theros is forced to join Morgoth's army as the weaponsmith with his apprentice Yuri. And he kind of discovers that Morgoth is a fucking psychopath. Like, this guy is joining the Queen of Darkness in her attempt to take over Krynn. He discovers that Yuri and Yuri's girlfriend in the camp are spies after a battle with Solamnic Knights. The Solamnic Knights being this ancient order of knights that no one likes anymore because they were supposed to stop the cataclysm where the gods threw the fucking mountain down on Ishtar, but they didn't because of Lord Soth. If you want to know that story, go to the other fucking video that's Lord Soth, and you'll work it all out. He lets Yuri escape, frees some Solamnic Knight prisoners, and decides, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. And he just fucking leaves. He has been visited by the Minotaur god. He got visited by the Minotaur god in his early life when he was on the ship. And he gets visited again, and the Minotaur god is like, why didn't you kill this guy? And he's like, dude, I fucking couldn't. And the Minotaur god's like, well, you're a fuckwit. And they have a bit of a falling out. Theros, at this point, he's a deserter from the army, so the army's kind of looking for him. He joins another army, not by choice, but because he's kind of forced into it. Something to do with a woman in Sanction that he fucked or whatever. But, hey, do what you got to do, mate. And after that, he decides, you know what? I've had enough. I've got enough money. I'm going to Solace. Pardon me. The town of Solace is the town at the opening of the Dragonlance Chronicles where everything kind of happens. It's built in these trees. They're called Valenwood trees, and the city's kind of like up in these giant fucking trees. And to get to Solace, Theros has to pass through the forest of Qualinesti, where he is waylaid by some elves and taken to the elven leader, Gilthanas. We meet Gilthanas in the Chronicles. He is the son of the Lord of Qualinesti, the brother of Lorana, who becomes the Golden General. You know, whatever. Just go read the fucking books. And Gilthanas basically says, listen, we need a smith because this dragon High Lord called Verminard, yes, the same Verminard from the Dragons of Autumn Twilight, he's attacking Qualinesti. We just want to evacuate our people. So for a year or so, Theros works for the elves with another guy who's a shipwright, and they build these ships to evacuate the people from Qualinesti, which Gilthanas ultimately is supremely thankful for and pays him more than he's fucking owed. And Theros takes all this money and heads to Solace, and he arrives in Solace and gets his smithy up and running. And around the same time, the opening of Dragons of Autumn Twilight begins, where we have Goldmoon and Riverwind and Sturm arriving, and Theros goes to the Inn of the Last Home run by Otig. He sees Tika, and Karaman comes in to get a weapon made and all of this kind of stuff. So Theros is kind of entwined in this story, which he will become later on in the Chronicle series, but it's just good to see where it all kind of fucking began. So if ultimately, like, if you don't know what ultimately happens, Theros gets into a fight with some Draconians. What are Draconians? Well, they're corrupted eggs of good dragons, copper, bronze, silver, gold, and brass. Yeah, that'll do. He gets in a fight with them, and one of the Draconians cuts off his arm. And that is where the story kind of ends, with him kind of meeting Goldmoon, the healer of the Chronicle stories. She is a cleric of Mashakal, the goddess of healing. And Sargas comes to him one last time, the Minotaur god, and says, you can now choose, I relinquish you of your faith. You can choose who you want to worship. And he chooses Mashakal because his mother was a believer in Mashakal. And that is where the book ends. But ultimately, we know he gets the silver arm of Urgoth, the hammer of Kares, the dwarven champion. He forges the Dragonlances, and good wins out. But that is the untold story of Theros Ironfeld. What did I think of this book? Absolutely loved every fucking minute of it, but I'm a fan of Dragonlance. Would a person who had never read a Dragonlance story get or understand anything in this novel? Of fucking course they would. It's so well written. It's just a fun fantasy tale. Even if you don't know the characters, it doesn't fucking matter. What happens is you want to know more. Like, this made me want to go back and read Chronicles. It really fucking did. Of course, I'm not rereading Chronicles. I'm kind of saving that for a later video. But if you don't know anything about the series, it doesn't really matter. If you know stuff about the series, you get these little, like, in-jokes and things like that. And, oh, that character and that character. And you see Caramon and Raceland having their back and forth. And Sturm being a Solemnic Knight, but he's not really. But he has the mustache and all of this kind of thing. It was a fucking awesome read. And I am so happy that I finally got a chance to fucking read this. It makes me want to track down the other books in the series. I believe it's Knight of the Crown, Knight of the Sword, Knight of the Rose, which deals with the Solemnic Knights. My Quest to Carthon, which is a book about the the captain of the ship that takes Tanis and his crew kind of across the Blood Sea, where they, in Dragons of Winter Night, they get stuck in the maelstrom and meet the Dagonesti elves. So these books are just fucking phenomenal. And what I love most about them is, are they canon? Who fucking cares? I know with the Star Wars books that Disney have said these aren't canon, we call them legends now and whatever. With these old TSR fucking novels, doesn't fucking matter if they're canon or not. They're fucking awesome. So, yeah. That is Theros Ironfeld. Beautiful cover art by Jeff Easley. I have to bring that up again because, I mean, Easley art is just fucking awesome. My favorite artist, of course, Larry Elmore, but Easley art is still really fucking cool and iconic of early Dungeons and Dragons. So we'll leave it there. Cheers, everyone. You thought I was going to drink that, didn't you? You fuckers. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe. But most importantly, of course, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and read a fucking book, people.